All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beef Up Front here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, joined alongside Joe Kmetz. And Joe, we made it. Monday of week 0. It's game week. The long summer months are drifting behind us. I think between you and I, we traveled to every state on the entire East Coast this summer. But it is time to get into football now. Saturday, 4 games, start us off. And as you like to say, the appetizer for the season. But tonight's episode, we will be doing our complete college football playoff breakdown, going through all our conference champions, and then going through our at-large teams for the first ever 12-team college football playoff. And then week 0 preview coming on Wednesday night. So, Joe, we're here, finally real games to talk about. All the speculation and previews over, and it's time to get into the real business and get out onto the field.
Feels good, Coyle. Feels good. This off season, although I feel like it went by quicker than others, like it's, you look back, you're like, oh wow, it's already been 7 months since we've had college football back. It feels awesome. I'm ready to just talk ball. I've been sitting on a lot of takes. I've been looking at the schedule. This is the best time of the year now. We're talking ball. We got games on Saturday. That sets us up for next week, which is week 1's always awesome. Always got some big games to carry the weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's dive right into it.
Yeah, my magazine that I bought, I think back in the beginning of June or something, it's destroyed. It's marked up left and right. It looks like it's been, at a freaking library for the past 30 years. Staple. I got 10 different staples in it trying to hold it together. So I've read that thing front to back and all for this. So ready to go, as you said. All right. So this year, excited. First ever 12-team college football playoff. You got your 4 champions. You got the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC. Those are the 4 auto bids. So the 4 winners of those conference championship games will be in. And then we also get the highest rated group of 5 teams. So a team from Sunbelt, MAC, Mountain West, Conference USA, and who am I leaving out?
The American.
The American. Okay, so then that's going to be something that's going to be widely kind of debated because that's not an automatic berth. You're going to have to win that conference, but then it's going to come back to where the committee rates you, ranks you. So no matter who gets in from the group of 5, there's still going to be arguments, speculation, whatever. But after those 4 auto bids, then we get our 6 at-larges as well. So the expanded playoff, obviously, more football, more fun. Looking forward to that for sure. But there's also going to be, the speculation and the, I guess, critiques of, all right, who does deserve to get into those at-large spots? Who does deserve in that top 4 to properly be ranked? So while this is the first year, I think there's still going to be a bunch of, wrinkles and whatnot and things that are going to have to get worked out, but they'll eventually work themselves out as they always do. So, Joe, before we get into our entire, I guess, field, we'll run through our conference champs first. And we'll start at the top with the ACC. So who is your representative in the ACC with that 1 auto bid?
So my representative is Florida State. I have them going 10-2 in the regular season. I have them beating Miami, which will be a rematch. I think Miami wins the regular season game at home. I have Florida State losing to Notre Dame as well, but that'll be a non-conference game. So I think going into the ACC title game, even though Miami beat Florida State, I think Florida State will still be the home team. I have Miami going 10-2 as well, and I have Florida State winning the ACC title game, getting that auto bid, and then getting a bye in the first round of the playoff.
Florida State kicks us off on Saturday against Georgia Tech, so good quick look at them. Florida State does enter as the favorite as of right now to win the ACC as well. DJU in the fold at quarterback. That's going to be interesting to see how he transitions into his second ACC school. My team that I have winning the ACC, I've been beating the drum for them all off season. And while the record that I have, I'm not exactly sure that it will finish at this. I think they might get tripped up once, but I do think they're going to be favorites in all 12 of their games. That's the Miami Hurricanes. I have Miami actually going 12-0. I can't wait till Florida finds a way to beat them week 1 in the swamp. But still, I think this is the most talented team in the ACC. Cristobal is obviously still the major question mark at head coach, but think they have the best player at the quarterback spot in Cam Ward. They bring in a hell of a transfer running back in Damian Martinez and a lot of guys that return on an offensive line where that's Cristobal's one biggest strength, being able to recruit up front and in the trenches. So I do think there's a scenario where Miami runs the table this year. Will they probably slip up once? I think more likely than not, but for argument's sake, I think it's one of these takes where it's either going to blow up in my face or I'm going to look really smart because of it. So I'm going with Miami, 12-0 ACC champ, and I have them beating. I actually have them beating Clemson in the conference title game. Clemson, a 10-2 squad, so that would push Clemson to a 10-3 and probably out of the playoff. I think that's going to be one of the major kind of talking points as well, because you get kind of the extra game and just say, Texas, they don't go to the SEC title game, but they finish with a 10-2 record. Does Clemson get the push over them because they had to play that extra game, or how did they value that? That's going to be one of the main talking points as well, and one of the main things I've kind of heard throughout the offseason, where are some teams really going to want to go to the conference title game? Like if they're like 10-1, or 11-1, are conference title games potentially out the window in a few years because they don't want to risk playing that extra game and potentially not make it in. So I think that's going to be one of the major things to watch this year. But I have Clemson going 10-2. Not that high on this Clemson team. I think the schedule is pretty easy. It helps them get there. But I would have Clemson losing that game and being out, and Miami being the representative there from the ACC. All right, we go over to the Big 12 now, Joe. Big 12 title game. Who do you got winning it, and who's the runner-up there in the Big 12 this year?
So I have Oklahoma State going 10-2. I have them beating Kansas State, who I also have going 10-2. Kansas State has a really tough stretch. They go Oklahoma State, then I believe they go to Colorado. I had the schedule on my phone, but if you guys remember back in June, my computer started making the noise. It still won't stop. I don't know what's going on. I'm still on my phone. But I have Oklahoma State. I have Ollie Gordon. I feel like when you have an offensive line that experienced, everyone is a fifth-year starter. You're returning so much talent. You have the best running back in the country. I just feel like this is a prime spot for Gundy to make it to the playoff for the first time in his career. I think they're going to win the Big 12, and I think Oklahoma State is going to be sitting there. I'm going to have them as the 4 seed in the playoff with a bye going into that next round where they'll get the 5-12 game, which, maybe they'll get lucky. Maybe they'll get popped up to 3 and they, can avoid potentially the best non-champ. But I think Oklahoma State, just that running attack, will be able to open up the passing game. When you have a quarterback that's like 42 years old, I mean, you can rely on that experience and that maturity to kind of guide your team to, having a great season. Kind of like how Brandon Weeden led Oklahoma State way back in the day when he was like almost as old as Eli Manning when he got drafted into the NFL. But I like Oklahoma State here to win the Big 12.
Yeah, I saw the picture today. Alan Bowman, their quarterback, posted first day of 19th grade. That was pretty awesome to see. But yeah, I give credit to you on this one. You kind of put me on to Oklahoma State at the beginning of the summer, and the more and more I looked into them, the more and more I bought into them. I actually have them winning this conference as well. I have them going 10-2. I have them beating 11-1 Kansas State. I do have Kansas State knocking off Oklahoma State during the regular season. That's at K-State, but I will have OK State winning the neutral site conference championship game. They remind me a lot. I think it's a little bit of a downgrade at the quarterback spot, but I do think the running game or the running back spot with Ollie Gordon is a little bit better. But at Florida State last year, Florida State had so many returning pieces from the year before. And it seemed like the year before was kind of a launching pad year. And then last year was a year that they're going to take off. Florida State does take off. They go to the playoff if Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt. And I think could have competed with any of those teams in the playoff. But Oklahoma State is in the same position, 5 returning starting offensive linemen. And they even got 4 or 5 guys behind them that have started multiple games. That's rare. You find that kind of depth. Like I almost had to read it through my magazine like 3-4 times just to like comprehend it, because if you have guys that are being able to play at the Big 12 level and they're not transferring out after they know they're going to be backups, that's very surprising in the modern day of college football. So for them to be able to return that many guys, and then if any of those guys go down, be confident to turn to the guys behind them. And then you have Ollie Gordon at the running back spot, some returning receivers, and a really experienced quarterback. That just adds up as a recipe for success. Now, Oklahoma State, though, does tend to do some Oklahoma State things and kind of shoot themselves in the foot at times. They could go out and lose to South Dakota State in week 1. I think that's only like an 8-point spread, and I wouldn't be shocked. Week 2, I think, is they play Arkansas. Arkansas is a team that has a lot of pressure on them with Sam Pittman this year. They're talented, but they're going to finish probably towards the bottom of the SEC. But are they really that far off talent from Oklahoma State? Like, there's a few games early on that Oklahoma State could get in their own way and kind of ruin the rest of the season. But for the potential playoff spot, but all you got to do at the end of the day is win your conference and you're guaranteed it. So a real veteran squad. I do think the offensive line is a difference maker, and I'm not going to have Kansas State beat them twice, but Kansas State going 11-1, you assume they would make the playoff, going 11-2 most likely, and at least get one of those spots still. So far, ACC, I got Miami, you got Florida State. Big 12, we're both on Oklahoma State going to the dance. All right, switch over now to the Big Ten. I think our last two conferences that we're breaking down here, Big Ten and the SEC, the two most anticipated conferences for this upcoming college football season. Joe, the discussion is, can Ohio State beat Michigan? Is Michigan going to be a playoff team coming off that national title? Oregon in their first year, do they come into the party and make noise themselves? Washington enters a conference too after playing in the national title game last year. I feel like has gotten no buzz this offseason because of all that they departed, the head coach leaving as well. So Big Ten, who do you got?
I have Ohio State. I think they're going to go 11-1. I think their only loss is going to be to Oregon on the road. I have them beating Oregon, who I have going undefeated. I'm in love with Oregon. I've said it a couple of times. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to win the Heisman. I have bet on Oregon to win the national title. I also bet on Ohio State because I think whoever wins this game kind of has a driver's seat to make it to the national title game. But I think Ohio State will win the rematch in Indianapolis. It'll be definitely a pro Buckeye crowd compared to going to the Autzen Zoo, and that's going to be such an awesome game. I cannot wait for that. But I have Ohio State, Ryan Day, finally getting to shake off the born on third base talk. I think they'll get it done. I think they'll win the Big Ten title game over Oregon, and really kind of flex to everybody that new teams. Michigan winning the national title last year doesn't matter. They're still going to be Ohio State, and they're going to win the conference, and they're going to get the 1 seed in the college football playoff.
Yeah, so Ohio State, the heavy favorite. I mean, I guess not entirely that heavy over Georgia, but they're minus 650 to make the playoff. That's pretty insane. Georgia minus 600 second, and then Oregon minus 300. So they're saying even if Oregon doesn't win the conference, they're still most likely going to make it. But Ohio State, a heavy favorite there, minus 650 to just make it. They're plus 155 to win the Big Ten. Oregon coming in second at plus 200. I'm right there with you, Joe. I have the same exact scenario. Ohio State 11-1. They beat Oregon in the title game, who goes 12-0 in the regular season. I was back and forth between Oregon potentially losing at Michigan. I think Michigan's a 8-4, 9-3 team this year, but still going to the big house, never an easy task, and Oregon has to do that this year. And I think where Oregon, a lot of their strength resides, and from what Dan Lanning's been doing off the back of Cristobal as well, the up front at the line of scrimmage, I think that's where they kind of been pretty dominant. Going to have to see with Dylan Gabriel how he looks in there. He should fit in just fine, but Michigan, you don't really want to go blow for blow with them at the line of scrimmage. That, especially in their house, that could come back backfiring on you. So that is one thing that I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for. How good is Oregon kind of translating into the Big Ten at the line of scrimmage? USC, that's a major reason why I'm down on them. I don't think they have the bodies right now to do that. So Oregon has been recruiting like a Big Ten SEC school, playing in the Pac-12, and I think that was kind of to their advantage these past few years. Now they get to put that to the test. But I do have Ohio State winning this as well. I have Oregon winning that regular season matchup. I do think it's kind of interesting, though, how Ohio State is the favorite to win the conference, and Oregon will most likely be favored in that game. And most people probably have Oregon winning that game because it's at Oregon. So that's going to be something to watch. But I think the common theme is a lot of these teams that meet up during the regular season, whoever you ever win in the regular season matchup, you're probably going to have the opposite team winning in the conference title game down the line. So Will Howard going there, is he an upgrade over McCord? I think that's going to remain to be seen. But as always, they have plenty of talent in the wings there at quarterback if he doesn't work out. But that roster, top to bottom, so loaded. So many guys return. The rumors of $25 million in NIL money pledged to these guys. I mean, that's going to bring in some talent. So Joe Kmetz there at running back. This team really doesn't have any flaws. It just, I think, comes down to, is Will Howard the guy to kind of get them over the top? Is he the guy that on 3rd and 5, you need a first down? Is he able to get that, whether it's his legs or his arm? So that's going to be one of the major storylines of college football this year. But I do have Ohio State winning the conference as well. So far, we both have Ohio State winning the Big Ten. We both have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12. I have Miami winning the ACC. You have Florida State winning the ACC. Now we transition over to the SEC, where I definitely think we're going to have two different squads. I think mine is going to be a bit of more of an eyebrow raiser than yours. But let's get into your pick here for the SEC, Joe.
So I'm going with Georgia to win the SEC, but I have them going 10-2. Only reason why I have them going 10-2, they have only 4 true road games, but 3 of those 4 games are at Bama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. I think it's more than likely that they drop 2 of those 3 games than it isn't. Because sandwiched in the middle of the Texas and the Ole Miss game, you have the rivalry game against Florida, which is a neutral site. And then after Ole Miss, you have Tennessee coming to town. So that could be a potential trap game. I know Kirby Smart's a great coach. I doubt that, there's going to be a true trap spot, so to say. And I have them beating Bama in the SEC title game. I have Bama going 9-3 in the regular season. I think they're going to beat Georgia, but 2 weeks before that, they have a bye in between it. They go to Wisconsin. I don't think that's a gimme. They go to Tennessee. They go to LSU. They go to Oklahoma. I think they're going to lose at least 2 of those games, and I'm taking a coin flip that they're going to lose a third just because that first year without Saban. Not that DeBoer isn't a great coach either, but I just think it's a little bit more than likely, it's going to be tough to get to 10 wins. 9-3 is still a great year. You're fighting in the SEC title game. I think they'll lose a close one to Georgia, and they'll get over the hump. In Georgia, I have as the 2 seed in my playoff, locking up that top 4. I think that the SEC is just going to be so awesome this year that, we'll talk about Bama even at 9-4. I think they'd still have a very good chance to get in just because of how tough the SEC is now. Not that it wasn't before, but you're adding 2 more quality teams in Texas and Oklahoma. So I think that'll definitely be interesting. We'll talk about that in a bit, when it comes to these G5 teams and stuff with, a 4-loss Bama team still potentially getting a higher seed than a 1-loss or undefeated G5.
I'll tell you what, though, the SEC commissioner is going to be sitting there scratching his head being like, what did we do if your title game is a 2-loss Georgia and a 3-loss Bama? Because does only one SEC team get in that scenario, though? Maybe 2, because, you got at least a few teams. You got probably several teams projected in there at 9-3 then, but probably a bunch at 8-4. These teams kind of just beating up on each other in these home road games. That's where I think Georgia has kind of separated themselves in the past few years, where it hasn't mattered if they've had a tough road game or a home game. They just go out there and find a way to win. I think this year in the SEC, it's much more, balanced where, I'll get into it. I have Georgia dropping a couple games this year, actually, in the regular season. So if that is the SEC title game, though, I think that would be a surprise, not team-wise, but record-wise, because, that means Texas is at best 9-3. Ole Miss is at best 9-3. Missouri is at best 9-3. LSU 9-3. So that would be pretty wild. I think that would be one of the more wild stories of the season, because I think so many people are expecting 4 teams out of the SEC probably to get in, and this scenario might be, definitely 1, obviously, but maybe at best 2. So that would be a pretty wild way to go into this 12-team college football playoff. My team that I have winning it this year out of the SEC, I'm going with my Rebels of Ole Miss. 11-1. I have them beating 11-1 Alabama. So I don't even have Georgia playing in the SEC title game. I read something today. Since November of 2020, Georgia is 46-2. Those 2 losses, the 2021 and 2023 title games to Alabama, which is pretty insane. So if my one take is that Georgia is a 2-loss team this year, I could definitely see that blowing up in my face. But I think that the conference is just so deep and so balanced. And looking at the Georgia defense, they don't have, exactly as many kind of household names, I feel like, as they've had over the past few years. Sure, they're still littered with 4- and 5-star guys, but they might not have that stud, that Jalen Carter, that Jordan Davis, Quay Walker at linebacker, guys like that were wrecking the entire SEC. They're going to have talent up and down the board. Carson Beck returns as well, but I'm so high on this Ole Miss team with Jackson Dart. And then I'm really high on Jalen Milroe as well. I'd take both of those two guys over Carson Beck. But I do think Ole Miss talent for talent is up there with just about anyone. Dart has as much experience as just about any quarterback in college football this year. Bring in the number one portal class. They beef up the offensive and defensive line. I think this is the year. I think this is the breakthrough. They get to play Georgia at home as well. That's a big one. I think I have their lone loss at LSU, and it's a schedule loss, mainly because it's their seventh straight week with a game. No bye or anything in between at LSU, and LSU's coming off a bye. So that's a tough spot to go into. But Ole Miss is here. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I have them winning the SEC. I think that they're at plus 650. It's a bet I haven't officially put in yet, but I do have them over that 9.5 win total. So them obviously going to the playoff there as your SEC representative, and then a 2-loss Alabama figures to get in as well. So, all right, our conference champs. I got Miami out of the ACC, Oklahoma State out of the Big 12, Ohio State out of the Big 10, and Ole Miss out of the SEC. Joe, you're going with Georgia out of the SEC, Ohio State out of the Big 10, Oklahoma State out of the Big 12, and the ACC, you have Florida State over Miami there. All right, so then give me your projected 1 through 4 based off of those teams.
So based off of the championship games, I have Ohio State 1 at 12-1, Georgia 2 at 11-2, Florida State 3 at 11-2, and Oklahoma State 4 at 11-2 as well.
My top 4, I have the Miami Hurricanes there at 13-0, going number 1. Like I said, that's going to be either the most genius take or an absolute blow up in my face take, but I'm buying it on the talent and the quarterback there. Number 2, I have Ohio State at 12-1. Number 3, I have Ole Miss at 12-1, and number 4, Oklahoma State in there at 11-2. So a little bit of variety there, a couple of the same guys, but then ACC, but I do think ACC, Big 12 are kind of the more open ones. Ohio or Big 10, SEC, I feel like everyone's kind of picking between the same 3 to 4 teams. ACC, I think you can make an argument for 4 to 5 teams. Big 12, I think you can make an argument for 7 to 8 teams. I think the Big 12 is going to be the most entertaining conference just because of a wide open kind of scenario where I could see double-digit dogs winning outright like weekly in that conference. I think it's going to be awesome. All right, so those are our 4 automatics out of the conference winners. And then give me your group of 5 winner, and then I guess your first team out from the group of 5. So as we said at the beginning, this is going to be a conversation where obviously one of these group of 5 team goes, but which one goes? It's going to come down to resume, how dominant these teams are, et cetera. But the committee ranks these teams. So whoever the highest ranked group of 5 team will get that most likely 12th berth, unless one certain team that I'll talk about finds a way to go undefeated. They're going to have a big time win over a Power 5 squad or Power 4 squad. They might even get, a higher spot. So Joe, who's your group of 5 team?
So my group of 5 team is Boise State. I have them going 12-1. I have their one loss. They play at Oregon, which is an awesome non-conference game. But I have Boise State being the team. I'm right on the fence with the Memphis Tigers. I'm kind of going back and forth. I sprinkled money for both of them to make the playoff. But I was telling, Coyle and the guys in our group chat, had a dream bet. Boise State makes the playoff. I had in the dream that they won a game, but if this is the scenario, they're not winning against, I'll spoil it. I have Boise as my 12, Oregon as my 5. I do not see the Boise State winning that game, but I do think Boise State it would be a rematch, yeah, and that's why the one thing with the seeding, I don't know how they would do it because I know they said they're going to try to avoid rematches in the first round. So in that case, maybe they get bumped up or Oregon gets bumped down, but I think Boise State is going to be the group of 5 representative in the playoff.
My group of 5 representative, and I think our 2 teams go hand in hand. You talked about them a little bit, but mine is Memphis. I have them going 11-1. Both of these teams have kind of a golden opportunity because Memphis plays Florida State, and then, as you said, Boise State plays Oregon. So, if either one of those squads win, you figure they'll be undefeated or favor in the rest of their matchups. They could go 12-0, and I think definitely have an argument to be, maybe like the 8 or the 9 seed rather than most people are kind of penciling them into number 12. So Memphis, a lot of returning talent on offense, quarterback back. was one of the more explosive offenses in the country last year. Had a really impressive bowl game too in the victory over Iowa State. So they're a team that I have the over nine wins, I think it is, and then they went plus 800, I think it was, to make the playoff. I forget if I've officially placed that one yet, but Memphis will be my G5 representative, and I have them at the 12 seed as well. All right, so we got 6 more teams to get into then, between 5 and 11. We can just run through these off the top of our head. Don't have to go one by one. But Joe, give me your 5 through 11 seeds and who your 6 at-large teams that are going to be going to the college football playoff.
So my 5 through 11, and now the seeding, like I said, I don't really know how they'll do it with the rematches thing, and I don't know how much they're going to either value or not value conference championship game participants. So I'm going with Oregon as the 5 at 12-1, Miami as the 6 at 10-3. I have Penn State going 10-2, getting the 7 seed. I think they're going to have a really good season. Some quality losses I think they would get ahead of. I have Notre Dame at 8. I think they're going to go 10-2. I have Kansas State at 9. They're going to be 10-3. I think the committee kind of looks at the Big 12 and the ACC as a little bit lesser than the SEC and the Big 10. So I have Kansas State getting the 9 there. Ole Miss at 10 and Tennessee at 11, both at 10-2. The reason why I have those teams there, I have Bama out. I think Bama loses to Wisconsin. That's why they get that 3rd loss. And then I think, they only have 2 SEC losses. I think that 4th loss in the conference championship game, if they do get in, it's going to be very hard to justify a 4-loss team over a 2-loss, either Ole Miss, Tennessee, or any other team in this list. Like I said, the seeding, I'm really just kind of taking a guess. I have no clue how they'll do it because this is the first year of this playoff, obviously. But then it kind of goes in the argument. If you're a 12-1 Boise State team, okay, like I know we're in the Mountain West, but we have 3 less losses than them. You would want a little bit of a higher seed. You can make that argument. That could be a little bit controversial, especially if Bama at 9-4 gets in and they play Miami in the first round and Miami beats them pretty soundly. That would be, something to talk about. I don't think Bama in this scenario would get in with 4 losses, but that would definitely be very interesting and very controversial if that were to happen.
So I guess I know you were just talking about Bama, but I guess your other 3 teams that were kind of hovering there right around probably. So you have K-State as a 3-loss, Miami as a 3-loss, Ole Miss 10-2, Tennessee 10-2. I guess what are your kind of other 3 teams that were hovering right there around the bubble that you potentially would get in?
I think Utah I have kind of hanging around there. I think
neither of us have Utah.
I think they're going to be pretty solid in the Big 12. They just they have a pretty tough schedule. They have to go to Colorado, I believe. They have to go, obviously, to Oklahoma State. Year 1 of the conference. I think Cam Rising's going to be healthy this year. I fingers crossed, knock on wood. But I think Utah's going to just miss out. I think Clemson's going to kind of be hanging around there. Kind of the same thing. They view the ACC as a bit lower than the SEC and the Big 10. So even if Clemson goes 10-2, they might not get in because if they, let's say, lose to Florida State, they avoid Miami, right? Yeah, Clemson and Miami do not play in the regular season.
No, I do not believe so.
Clemson has to go. Another team you and I are high on, not to make the playoff, but just in general, Clemson goes to Virginia Tech. They lose those 2 games, and Virginia Tech finishes, 8-4, 9-3. The committee could ding them, and you see Clemson kind of on the outside looking in. LSU is another team that I have kind of hanging around there. And then after that, G5 wise, I talked about Memphis. I could see, 12-1 Memphis, trying to make an argument that they should get in, maybe being like 16th, 17th, they miss out. But then after that, I think there's going to kind of be a justifiable gap between the remainder of the teams. Those are just some other teams I kind of have that'll be hanging around that the last couple spots there.
I'd be really interested to see too. I mean, you feel like the debate part has gone away now that it's 12 teams instead of 4, but I feel like there's going to be even more debates now because there's more money to argue with. But like, just say if Memphis beat Florida State and Florida State goes 9-3 or 10-2 or something, still has a good year, but then Memphis loses to like Tulane during the regular season. What do they view that as? How do they judge that? And if Memphis still wins the AAC or something. So there's so many different scenarios, and we'll get into them every single week, I'm sure. But all right, my at-large squads. I have number 5. I have Oregon at 12-1, losing in the Big Ten title game to Ohio State. They'll comfortably still be in there after an undefeated regular season. Number 6, I'll go with the runner-up in the the SEC, with Alabama at 11-2. My Big 12 runner-up, Kansas State. I'll give them the 7 seed at 11-2. Missouri, 11-1. I'm very high on them this year. I think that they're favored in 10 of their 12 games. 11-1 season. That's how good I have the SEC, because I have Alabama beating Missouri. That's Missouri's lone loss, so that puts Mizzou into the title game. Also, Joe, I don't know if you've heard this, but the SEC and the Big Ten haven't decided on their tiebreaker scenarios yet for conference championships. So that's going to be, I don't know, when do you do that? Like week 7, just be like, oh, hey, here it is. But that's something that's going to come into effect as well. So try to do my best with those. But Kansas State, 7, Mizzou at 8. Notre Dame, I have making it. You're Irish. You have your Irish making it, Joe? Oh, no, you do. You have them there at 8. Okay. Yeah, so I have Notre Dame at 11-1. I have them losing to A&M week 1 and running the table from there. 10, I have Georgia at 10-2. Texas, my 11 seed at 10-2. And then my G5 team with Memphis, 12 seed overall at 11-1. So my first 4 teams out, according to my schedule predictions, went through game by game. Clemson at 10-3. Like I said, that's going to be a tough one. Like, they go into that title game 10-2. Are they going to get dinged? And this is something that we've talked about in the Gambler a bunch, but are you going to get dinged for potentially having another loss? Could that get used against you? Or is it going to be one of those situations where it's it can only help you, but it can't hurt you? That's something I think is going to be one of the main talking points. Iowa, I have them going 10-2. I have them not making it. I just think the committee will probably rank them lower than, a 2-loss Georgia or a 2-loss Texas. LSU, I had going 10-2, not making it. And Penn State, I had going 10-2 as well, because I have Penn State losing the Ohio State game, and then I have them losing to Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, I have them beating Penn State and beating Alabama. So even if that team went 8-4 or something, that's going to be, a worse loss than probably a Georgia or a Texas has over a 10 or a 11 win SEC team. So Penn State still with 12 teams in the playoff, I still have them not making it. So that might be a bet I actually go look to place, because I know they're favored to make it. All right, to wrap it up, we'll get into our playoff bracket now. And then to conclude, we'll go with our Heisman Trophy. So playoff bracket, the first 4 seeds get buys. This is the cool part, and I think it should have been kind of campus sites throughout until at least the semifinals. But these games will all be at campus sites. So the first round, you get 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, 7 versus 10, and 8 versus 9, all at campus sites. That's going to be an awesome thing to see. Friday the 19th, I believe it is, and Saturday the 20th of December. All right, Joe. So give me your 5 versus 12 matchup. Who you got? You got Oregon versus Boise State. Who you got moving on there?
I have Oregon winning that game pretty handily, especially if they are coming off a loss in the Big Ten title game. Dan Lanning going to be pissed off. Those players going to be pissed off. Boise State, that'd just be a real tough consolation prize. Going 12-1, winning the Mountain West. Now you get to go up to Oregon again and lose again. And that'll be it for their little, Cinderella run. But I'd have Oregon winning that game pretty handily.
All right, my first matchup, 5 seed. I have Oregon as well at the 5, and I have them playing the 12 Memphis. As you kind of were just talking about, once you get to this game, it's a little bit of a step up. Good for you. Congrats, you made the playoff. Awesome accomplishment for your program. But I do have Oregon kind of taking it to Memphis in this one. Memphis, if they do get to that game, interesting just because of the way that they play offense and the way that they kind of throw the ball around the yard. That's what Washington did to them last year, gave Oregon troubles. Their only 2 losses. Is Memphis able to replicate that? I don't know if they have quite the talent of Michael Penix and Rome Odunze, but I will have Oregon winning that game as well. So Oregon moves on. I'll go first for this one. If this happens to be one of the first round playoff games, anyone who ever complains about why you went to 12 team, we'll just probably shut up when this game's on the screen. But number 6, Alabama hosting number 11, Texas, just doesn't get much better than that. I'm going to have Alabama getting their revenge on Texas in that one from the game last year, and I'm going to have Alabama advancing the home field obviously is going to be a big part. And I'm a huge believer in Jalen Milroe. I think he takes an even bigger jump this year. And Quinn Ewers, he's a guy that I think I'm a little lower on than most. And I think this Texas team doesn't have quite as much talent as it did last year. So I'm going to have Alabama moving on to the quarterfinals.
So in my 6-11 game, I have Miami, Tennessee. I actually have Tennessee, the 11 seed, getting the upset here, beating Miami. This is kind of just, I think Tennessee, at the end of the day, getting battle tested, going through the SEC will be the difference. I feel like, Miami, at times, we talk about their home field advantage, how it's not great. A playoff game would be a completely different atmosphere. I understand that. But I could also see Tennessee fans getting a bunch of tickets and turning, making the home field advantage that isn't great to begin with, kind of even, a little bit less meaningful. I think Tennessee wins a close one in this scenario. I'm going with the Vols to upset Miami, at least in terms of seeding. Some people might not view that as an upset. Tennessee might even be, favored or like a 2.5-point dog, something like that. But I'm going Tennessee advancing to the quarterfinals over Miami.
Yeah, so I mean that's something where we're completely on the opposite ends. You have Tennessee going all the way to the quarterfinals. I don't even have them making the playoffs. So many different scenarios that we could get to. My 6-11 matchup, I already have my 6-11 there. My 7-10 matchup, I have Kansas State hosting Georgia. So that's like Kansas State. We have such a great year. We go 11-2. We get this home game. Who do you draw? Georgia. Pissed off Georgia, most likely coming into. Arrested Georgia, and because I don't even have them going to the SEC title game. I'm going to have Georgia go in there at the end of the day. We kind of talked about it with the Oregon-Memphis game. Like, it's just a little bit of a different game. Avery Johnson, I'm really high on. I think he's going to have an awesome season. And if he leads them to an 11-2 season, he's definitely going to be in the Heisman conversation, taking that team all the way to the Big 12 title game. But I do think it ends there against Georgia. So I will have Georgia moving on to the quarterfinals as well.
So I have my next game, Penn State, Ole Miss. Penn State to 7, Ole Miss to 10. I'm going Ole Miss over Penn State. I saw a tweet and I can't get it out of my head. It was James Franklin is destined to lose at home in the first round of the college football playoff. Just how kind of like Penn State every year is good, not great. Feel like they'll get to that step. I'm also very high on Jackson Dart, like you, Coyle. I'm not high on Ole Miss enough to win the SEC. I think they'll be just short of that, but I think they will definitely be a better team than Penn State this year. Even on the road, I think Ole Miss will win and advance to the quarterfinals. And then I'll just go quickly for my 8-9 game. I would have Notre Dame winning a low-scoring, ugly game against Kansas State in the 8-9 matchup. I think Notre Dame, at the end of the day, just a little bit better, tougher defense. And I think they'd be able to get it done over Kansas State, who, like you, Coyle, I think is going to be very good this year, but I think they'll just lack the horses to truly make a deep run in this playoff.
That would be a awesome, like, the helmets would be popping off and shit, like 8 degrees out in there. I do think one of the things that is going to play a big difference, like Ole Miss, like having to travel to Penn State in December, like that's going to be something that definitely, I mean, especially with the lines and stuff, definitely going to play a role. But I mean, when you have so many SEC teams, that's why these like Big Ten schools are really going to be trying fighting for those higher spots so they can kind of get that home field. I mean, just look at the Chiefs Dolphins last year and how uncomfortable the Dolphins were and how acclimated kind of the Chiefs were. My 8-9 game, I have sorry, that was your matchup. I have Mizzou playing Notre Dame. I think that's another fun one, but I'm going to have Mizzou there. I'm a little bit higher on their offense, the offensive side of the ball. I think Notre Dame's defense is going to be great. It's one of these things, though. You give Notre Dame the 8 seed, Mizzou the 9. I'd probably give it to Notre Dame, but Mizzou getting the home game there, I'm going to roll with them. So we move on to the quarterfinals now, where I'll start it off. My number 1 seed with Miami playing Missouri. I think that's a fun, exciting, offensive-filled game. But I'm going to have Miami winning that game there. I think Mizzou comes up a little bit short on talent in that one, and I'm going to take Cam Ward over Brady Cook at the end of the day. So give me Miami moving on to the college football semifinals.
Yeah, I'm going to have in my 1-8 Ohio State over Notre Dame. As much as I would hate to see that living in the house with my brother who's a big Ohio State fan. I think Ohio State more talented top to bottom at the end of the day than Notre Dame. I think it'll be kind of similar to how the game was last season. A little bit more higher scoring, but I could see it kind of being close late, but then Ohio State kind of putting the game away. Once again, when you have the offensive weapons that they do, um, when you have an experienced guy like Will Howard coming in there, quarterback, I think it'll be really hard to beat Ohio State. I have them beating Notre Dame going to the semifinals.
The semifinals, too, I was going to say, I was looking at the schedule Thursday and Friday night. It's kind of interesting. I think because it runs right up on wild card weekend for the NFL. So you get Thursday, Friday night of the semifinals right into NFL wild card weekend. That's a fun little stretch there.
Nice little 5-day bender there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, my next matchup, I have, once again, as we said with the Bama Texas first round matchup, second round you give me Ohio State at 2 versus number 10 Georgia. That's a hell of a matchup itself as well. So Ryan Day is shitting himself if he sees that. Like, why? Like, how did we, after winning the Big Ten, wind up with that? But I am going to have Ohio State winning that game. I'm going to have them getting, I guess, over this hump. I mean, it's kind of a broken record at this point, but like Ryan Day hasn't even lost, I think, 10 games in his college career. Like, but it's just because he lost to Michigan and he lost to Georgia in the playoff a few years ago. He gets kind of shit on, but the dude just wins games, and I'm a little bit higher on this overall squad than the Georgia squad this year. So I'm going to have Ohio State moving on to the semifinals there as well.
Yeah, in my next game, I have Georgia over number 10 Ole Miss. Feel like that'll just kind of be a rematch from the regular season. You give Kirby Smart enough time to prepare, especially a rested Georgia team where you have an Ole Miss team that just went on the road to Penn State in December. Probably had to really gut one out. You know what I mean? They're not gonna run all over the field. Making all these highlight plays. That'll be a gutsy win. I feel like they'll just kind of be out of gas a little bit playing against Georgia. I have Georgia advancing there to the semifinals. I'll go first with my next game. I have number 3 Florida State over number 11 Tennessee. I feel like the mini Cinderella run kind of ends here. I think Florida State, I'm more so just like believing in DJU just because he's been around long enough. Like, he's kind of like a less athletic Bo Nix in the sense of like, oh, this is going to be the year it finally clicks. Like, he's been in the game long enough. He had a solid season last year at Oregon State. He can make the throws when he needs to make them. He's not going to like wow you. You're not going to look at his stats and be like, oh, wow, he threw for 500 yards. He'll do enough to get you the win, but I think that'll be enough to get Florida State at least to the semifinals, especially, if this is the path to get there.
Yeah, you're a lot higher on Florida State than I am. I have them only going 9-3, not even making the playoffs, and I'm kind of the opposite of you to where I think DJ is going to be the thing that caps them and the reason why they kind of struggle. He's going to be for sure one of the main kind of faces of discussions this year because they enter the year as the favorite, and he's looked at, if not an upgrade over Travis, at least kind of on the same tier, and Travis led them to an undefeated season last year. So DJU has certainly a lot of pressure, and for kind of his NFL future as well. Like, this is as good of a opportunity as he'll have to kind of revamp his stock. So Florida State's going to be an interesting watch this year, and the first team we get to watch on Saturday. My next game, Alabama versus Ole Miss, 6 versus 3. This is my rematch from the SEC title game. I have Alabama winning this game. I'm not going to have Ole Miss beating them twice. It's a unfortunate end to a season that I think, depending on matchups, could certainly see Ole Miss going to the quarterfinals, the semifinals, potentially even the finals. But I think Bama gets them in round 2. I do think that would be an awesome game coming off probably a really good SEC championship. But I think Jalen Milroe is a gamer. I think he's a guy that just, when pressure's on down the stretch, he kind of figures out a way to get it done, just like in the Auburn game in the Iron Bowl. So I'm going to have Alabama advancing to the semifinals as the number 6 seed. And then to round out my semifinals, number 5, Oregon over number 4, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, I think, is the weakest of my conference champions. I mean, I think the quarterback play kind of gets exposed at some point. I think they'll be able to make it through the Big 12 mostly fine with Bowman, but when it comes down to it, like we were talking about with Will Howard, 3rd and 5, game on the line. I'm going to take Dylan Gabriel to go make a play over Alan Bowman, and I think that it comes down to that. You need that quarterback to be able to make these key plays if you're going to make a deep run in this thing, because once you get to this round, you're matching up against a Georgia, an Ohio State, an Oregon, and Alabama. When you're Oklahoma State, those squads are going to have more talent than you. So I'm going to give Oregon the advantage there, and Oregon goes to the semifinals.
Copy and paste what you just said, Coyle. I have Oregon over Oklahoma State in my last game of the quarterfinals. So that sets up my semifinals are Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State. I'll do my 2 picks right now. I have Oregon winning the rematch, part 3, over Ohio
That'd be awesome.
I say I've been drinking the Oregon Kool-Aid. I'm all in on the Ducks this year. I think they're going to make it to the national title game. I have Georgia over Florida State, just because at the end of the day, I think they're more talented than Florida State. And it'll kind of be, a cool storyline going into that, like, Florida State going for their revenge after the bowl game disaster. So I would have Oregon and Georgia playing in the national championship game, which would be awesome to watch. But I'm curious to see what your matchup would be in the national title game.
Yeah, so I have Miami undefeated heading into this game, run the table 12-0 in the regular season, win that ACC title game 13-0, beating Mizzou to go 14-0. But I do have Oregon, the number 5 seed, actually tripping them up here. The miracle run ends there for Miami, but I think the Hurricane fans are doing backflips and cartwheels up and down South Beach if that's a scenario, if they make it that far. But I do think this is the year that Oregon kind of breaks through. Feels like they've been behind Washington these past couple of years. They're able to get that breakthrough, get to that national title game. Do they win it? Remains to be seen, but I do have Oregon knocking off Miami. And then number 2, Ohio State versus number 6, Alabama. I mean, you can't ask for a much better semifinal game than that. But I just think this Ohio State squad is so deep, so dangerous, and they can hurt you at just about every spot. And Alabama, I think they're going to be just fine with DeBoer, but situations like this, it's not Saban on the sideline. If it's Saban on the sideline, I'd probably give him the nod. Maybe DeBoer can prove to be that over these next few years. But I am going to go with Ohio State beating Alabama. I think that would be an awesome semifinal matchup. But I have Ohio State versus Oregon, round 3 for the national championship. So, Joe, national champion, Oregon or Georgia for the 2024 season?
I have Oregon beating Georgia in the national championship game. I feel like Oregon's been building towards this. 2 years ago, they were getting a lot of hype. Georgia smoked them in Atlanta to open up the season. That game wasn't even close. It was a complete blowout. It was a complete embarrassment. Last year, you saw Oregon starting to get the hype. People were talking about them to win the Pac-12 last year. They lose 2 games to Washington, completely tanked the end of their season. I think this is the year Dan Lanning's been building towards. I think that this would be an awesome storyline. Dan Lanning going up against Georgia, his former team, all the coaches that he used to be with over there, and going and beat them in the national title game, and finally getting Oregon a national championship. They lost twice to Ohio State and Auburn. Now this would be an awesome, storybook season. Oregon gets their first national title, which is probably one of the best programs that doesn't have one. If you'd have to, at least off the top of my head, I would say, Oregon. But I have Oregon winning the national title game. I have Dylan Gabriel winning the Heisman Trophy. I think the Ducks are going to do it this year, and they're going to be champs, and I'm going to be a very happy man because I have them to win the national title.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I think there is a serious argument as Dylan Gabriel is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in college football history. I going into the year, he's on pace to break the record for all-time passing yards and passing touchdowns. He does that. He leads Oregon to this good of a year. He's probably winning the Heisman, I would think, and winning the national title. Not much more you can do there, and doing it, not at those guys that were doing it at Houston and Texas back in the day when they were throwing, or Texas Tech throwing for however many yards. Gabriel's not done it at Oklahoma, Oregon, and UCF obviously stepped down, but that would be a pretty legendary career in my book. I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. Number 2, Ohio State over number 5, Oregon. If we get that as a round 3 matchup for the national title, I think everyone's clapping as well. That would be, a fun end to the season. I guess a little hypocritical what I was kind of saying, where if it comes down to 3rd and 5, I'd probably rather have Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. Um, but I do think at the end of the day, Ohio State top to bottom is still the more talented team. And I do have faith that Will Howard could be that guy. He has the potential to be that guy. Will he go out there and do it? Remains to be seen, but you can't ask for a better kind of supporting cast of guys to throw to it and the running game to have as well. And Chip Kelly, I think that is one of the best acquisitions of the offseason through the transfer portal. And we're talking about a coach there. Dropping his head coach title to become an OC. I think he's going to be an awesome offensive coordinator, just being able to call the plays and whatnot. So I have Ohio State as my national champion. They enter the year as second favorites, plus 380, and then Oregon plus 750. So I think those are 2 bets, Joe, that we're going to have to throw in there. But the representative comes from the Big Ten. So I'm a Buckeye, you're a Duck. To finish it off before we get out here for today and then turn our attention to week 0, Heisman Trophy winner, the 2024 season. Who you got?
Dylan Gabriel, all in on him. I'm all on the Ducks this year. I do. I think this is just like everything is lining up for them. I don't know why. I haven't felt this confident about a national title pick in college football in the preseason in a long time. I know I predicted Georgia like the second year we did this when they won the first time, but I still didn't feel as confident then as I did with Oregon. I don't know why. I just got a feeling in my bones that they're going to do it this year. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to have a career year. Like we might be talking like this will be one of the top 5 to 10 best seasons, let alone players' best seasons in college football history.
Would be something. Like you said, if he wins that national title and the Heisman Trophy, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, bringing the records too. But I'm going with my guy. I had him like last year through like 3-4 weeks, and then I feel like I'm usually like a year ahead on this stuff. I don't know why. I can never forecast it the correct year. But like one like NFL bet I like this year is like I had it last year at 25-1. Amon-Ra St. Brown to win Offensive Player of the Year. I could see him doing that this year, and it's going to be like half the number. Haven't even looked at it, but Jackson Dart, Heisman Trophy winner, 14-1. I think he's in for a huge year, entering his 3rd year starting in the SEC. And I think one of the bigger things that hasn't been talked about nearly enough for a guy, especially like Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin came out and said it himself, with the quarterback being able to get the technology in the helmet now to hear the play caller for teams like especially Ole Miss that don't huddle and just go to the line of scrimmage. Lane Kiffin's able to talk to you up till 15 seconds into that helmet. Lane Kiffin said it himself. He said it's basically a cheat code. Like, just imagine how successful his offenses have been without that ability. Now he's basically able to just say, throw it to 2. Like, 2's going to be wide open. Just throw it to him. And it's kind of just read and react off of what your coach is feeding into your helmet. So that's a very advanced thing. Going into your 3rd year starting in the same system, talent all around with guys returning. I think their top 3 receivers return, that are arguably the top tight end in the country in prescoring. Bringing Juice Wells as well from South Carolina. This is going to be an offense that I think rivals LSU from last year. And I have Ole Miss going 11-1, winning the SEC title. Jackson Dart will certainly be right there in the conversation, but give some love to my guy, Avery Johnson, as well, 25-1 for my long shot play. But any last second kind of big picture comments, Joe, before we head out and turn our attention to week 0, where got Delaware State and Hawaii to break down?
I can't wait until midnight when I throw about $1,000 on Hawaii minus 38. It's going to be so awesome. I cannot wait. I'm so jacked up, locked in. Let's go right into week 0 right now. Let's just do it. I'm ready to go.
Gotta save the spread the content out for the week. But I think I looked it up earlier. I think it's like a 12,000 mile flight from Delaware State to Hawaii. So that's incredible in its own right. That's a long way to go for ass kicking. I looked at Delaware State's schedule, Joe, from last year. They lost to Bowie State in the first game of the year, which I believe is a Division II school. And I think their only win was over Virginia Lynchburg, which might be a Division III school.
If it's the same Lynchburg, I think that's their D3 because I think Miz played them in baseball. For when they won, shout out Miz Baseball, by the way, national champs.
These guys were just getting killed left and right last year. It's incredible.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's bad when I haven't even heard of Bowie State. Like
Yeah, I know that's in Maryland, but I think it's definitely not a D1 school. We know that. So, but we have Florida State, Georgia Tech should be solid. And you have FCS, Montana State as a 9-point favorite over New Mexico. SMU, Nevada. SMU is a team I'm excited to get into. They're going to be a fun watch in the ACC. And then Hawaii versus Delaware State. But then next week, I mean, obviously week 1 has a bunch of headliner games, but like Thursday, you got a couple good ones: Minnesota, UNC, North Dakota State, Colorado. So going to be some fun ones to get into, but it would be good to get first taste of some action this week. But as always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We got some good views on the stream tonight, and we'll be breaking it down each and every week here at Beef Up Front.